at several packets that have some different pieces of information for you. This is the only one that will have a copy of that formula chart, so please make sure you don't lose this. Remember, you will have access to a formula chart at all times during your EOC exam. Things that we're going to focus on today in category 1. Okay? Is it a function or not? Meaning the x does not repeat. We also have talked about domain and range being our y. It is also our dependent variable. Independent is domain and x. Domain is left to right. Range is up and down. So these are just little key pieces of information. Remember, when you have a mapping, x's are always on the left, y's are always on the right. X is domain, independent input, y is range, dependent output. We also talked about this way back when Dr. XY forgot his ID, meaning that our domain is on the x-axis, is our independent variable, and our range is on the y-axis. This is our dependent variable. Okay, so just a little mnemonic device to help you remember that. Function notation, we talked about that a while back. Y is the same as f of x. Y depends on x. Y is a function of x. These are all the same thing. So if I gave you the equation f of x equals 2x squared plus 3, and then I said f of 1, the 1 is in place of the x. So wherever we have an x, we'll put the 1. 1 squared is 1 times 2, plus 3 is 5. Or if we put the 3 in place of the x, same thing. Our calculator tip is that you can, in fact, graph a linear equation, menu. When you go ahead and you put this in, you can put in our line. Now, you are not going to, unfortunately, be able to do a vertical or a standard form. So if you just open up your graph, it's automatically going to be a y equals because it's f of x. Default is f of x, meaning function of x. Or when we could do an inequality, unfortunately, we can't do that anymore. So keep in mind you can graph your equations. Does anyone have any questions on these little pieces of information? What we're going to do today is we're going to do a couple of we do, you do's to kind of work through these kinds of questions. I'll send you a quick poll. We'll do one. We'll do a quick poll on the you do. And then we just want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with this information. And then there'll be some released questions for you to look at. And those will be a grade. So let's look here. Which of the following equations does not represent a function? Meaning, what does this word function mean? No repeat x's. So how can we figure out which one of these is going to be a function? What would be our strategy? Definitely, I would graph that. So let's take a minute and do that. So if the y equals is a horizontal, the x squared we know is a parabola. This we're going to have to do some manipulating. But what do you know? You can't put the x in there. So if the y equals is a horizontal, what's going to happen on the x equals? It's going to be a vertical. So do we even need to do C because we know this is linear? Which one of these is not going to be a function, meaning no repeat x's and the vertical line test, right? It's going to have to be B. All right, how do you feel about that? All right, so what I would like for you to do now, and I'm going to send you a quick poll, is I would like you to try the you do. So you could graph this, but it says it is a function, and you know a function has no repeat x's. Look at this. It says 2 and 2. Could 2, 5 be on the same line if it's a function? No. -1. Here's a -1. Could this -1, 9 be on this line if it's a function? No. -3, 21, -3, 15. So you should have told me A. Now, some of you were doing lists and spreadsheets, and then you were going and you were looking at your table, which is perfectly fine. You can definitely do that. Does anyone want to see that? Are you okay? Okay, so if you were going to do list and spreadsheets, remember you always have to do the X and the Y. So you would have -2, -1, -3, 11, 5, and 21. And then you would say menu 4, 1, 3, X and Y. Here's our equation. Of course, the equation doesn't matter, right? We do control doc. We talked about you could, remember it stores it in the graph. And you could look, control T. Okay, -2, this is 14, it's not exact, but you needed to realize that these numbers cannot be on there. Okay, it would make more sense if they put the exact number. All right? So pay attention to what is a function. What about this, the range? What did we know? What did we say about range? Range is y. So am I putting it says y is here, right? Y equals 2x plus 3. So the domain is what? Domain is x. So am I putting these numbers in place of y or in place of x? X. So we're going to have to come in and we can say 2 times -3 plus 3. This is just one way to do this. 2 times -1 plus 3. 2 times 1 plus 3. Is there another way we could do this? What would that be? Definitely. We could put it in the graph. We have an equation here, 2x plus 3. We can look at our table and we can say, okay, at -3, we got -3. At -1, we got +1. And at +1, we got 5. So this is actually our range. So what would be our answer? B. So now you try this one. Now notice this one says g of -2. So is this y or is this x? This is, look at it. Where is it? It's in place of the t or the x, right? So how are we going to set this up? You could graph it and use lists and spreadsheets, or you can plug it in. Make sure you put parentheses around that negative. Send me an answer on the quick poll. All right, you should have gotten 17 now. You will have to be able to put this. You don't have to fill in the bubbles because it's going to be online, but you have to be able to put it in the boxes. You can put the plus sign if you want. That is not required, but you do have to put them in the box correctly. If you're going to put a decimal, you better put it at the end. You could technically put all the extra zeros if you wanted. You can see we plugged it into the calculator here, or if you graphed it and you went to your table, it's not a bad idea to do both just to double check. All right, shall we try one more? Which of the following is equivalent to this? Okay, guys, this is not a calculator question. You're not going to be able to do this. Okay, this is standard form to y equals. And we said for standard form, you need to move ax and divide by b. Or if you wanted to change, you could definitely, that's the way you would want to do it. So if we're going to move ax, what are we going to do? We're going to minus that 4x. I'm going to put it over here. And then what am I going to do now? Divide by the 6. Okay, that is not going to be anything that the calculator can help you with except for here if you wanted to simplify, if you weren't sure. What do we get? Notice that this is A, my X and my constant are flipped, and that's okay. So make sure you keep the sign correct. Notice this one is, this part is simplified correct, but this one is not. And then this just forgot to divide by the 6. So I would like you to do that on try it number 3. Take a moment and so here's what we needed to do. We needed to move that 2x over. Make sure you keep that 5 negative, that 15 positive. What happens when you divide a negative by a negative? It is a positive. And a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So you should have gotten D. Be careful with the signs. I am going to ask that you do these 3 questions tonight on your own. But before we do that, let's look at some more examples. Because that part will be a grade. So we've got, I did not teach y'all storing. We don't need to worry about that. We did talk about, this is a repeat, graphing the linear equations. Right? If you go ahead, f of x is the same as y. Parts of the parabola. Remember, this is vertex form, this HK. That is your vertex. Remember, the axis of symmetry is that x equals h number. We talked about roots and solutions. And then here, we talked about you can graph, you can look in a table, you can do the math and set your factors equal to 0. So let's look at a little bit of quadratics here. Your favorite. The area of the shaded region. What would you do? Think back to 6th grade when you learned about composite figures. If I said only the shaded region, just tell me the basic what you would do. Find the area of the whole thing, and then what? And then what? So you're going to have to take and find the area of the whole thing and subtract the area of the middle. Do you agree? Can we distribute and find the area of this? What do we get? 2x times 2x, be careful. 4x squared. And 2x times a negative 1 is a negative 2x. What are you going to do here, though? You can do FOIL or you can do box, right? So we say x times x is x squared. I'm going to put that down here. And I'm going to have to subtract all of these. So x times 5 is minus the 5x, minus the 1x, minus the 5. So what is 4x squared minus 1x squared? 3x squared. Look, they all have a 3x squared. That doesn't help us. A negative 2, a negative 5, and a negative 1. What do we get there? Negative 8. Don't forget our x. Well, that brings us to these two. And then I have a minus 5. Which one is it? A. All right. So I would like you to try this one. Only now you don't have to do that multiplying. I'm giving you the dimensions. So when you multiply this, make sure, whether you're doing FOIL or box, that you are being very careful. 8x squared, be careful with those signs, plus 28x minus 10x minus 35. All right. And then, so it can't be these. It has to be this one. Be careful with those signs. So if you chose A, you got to be careful there. What are you going to do here? You got a couple strategies on this. We do. What are you going to do? You can solve each one. You can distribute. You could you graph and look for the overlap? That's one strategy. Or you can do a cross puzzle if you remember how to do that. But remember, this is A, so you're going to have to do the swing method. This is going to be 15 and a -2, but then you got to do that whole divide by 2 thing. So 2x plus 15 and x minus 1. Or that graphing piece is probably easier for you if you're like, I do not remember this, Mrs. Ray. That's okay. You can definitely go through and you can graph these and see what you get. So you're just looking for that overlap. Here's the first one, which happens to be the answer. It overlaps exactly. Now, if you're going to do that, make sure you're typing it in correctly. All right, so I would like you, now this one you can't use the calculator on. This is a factor. You're going to have to do a cross puzzle because you don't have the other one to graph it. The cross puzzle, remember, is A times C and B. So take a moment there. This is a perfect square trinomial, but if you don't remember that shortcut, AC is 36, B is -12. So we get x minus 6 quantity squared. If you remember when we did completing the square, this is the same concept. X sine of B square root, and there you go. So nice job on that. This is also a special case. This is on that formula chart, but if you do not remember that, again, you can graph or you can do a cross puzzle. 16 times 9 is a big number. So it's kind of, well, it's not terrible, 144. And this is negative. So what is this going to be? A positive and a negative what? What? 12, very nice. But then you also have that 9. So if you do not remember how to do this, so you get -4/3, and then you'll get a positive 4/3. If you don't remember that, graph these and look for the overlap. That's going to be your best bet. This one is going to be B. The last one I'm going to have you do today is number 3. It is you can do a cross puzzle like we just did, or you can do a shortcut. So take a moment, see what you get. Right here, if you're going to do the shortcut, x minus 3, x plus 3, because this is a negative. You can also do your cross puzzle. All right? Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. We did not finish the last page, and that's okay. You need to do the first set of EOC questions. There are 3. If you turn the page, there is a second set. I want all 7 of these done when you come in tomorrow. Have a great one.